So what I'd like to do now is introduce this afternoon's first speaker. And he's a speaker who's very tall, dark, handsome, and brilliant at data governance. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, so you're stuck with me. So what I was going to talk about, to try and wake everybody up after lunch, is a session that talks about why data governance isn't boring. Now, I'm the first to admit there are some things in life that are boring. And here's a few examples. Gardening is very boring. Nobody can argue about this, particularly cutting grass, where you wheel a lawnmower up and down the lawn, cut the grass, 2 weeks later, you're back to square one. And that's the way that many companies currently do data governance, by the way. They let the data get long and dirty, they clean it a bit, and 2 weeks later they do it over again. That's not the right way to do data governance. There are some things in life. Have we got any Americans? Phew, good. I suspect Michael, you were Canadian.
French.
French. Oh, French. I'm sorry, I thought you might have been Quebec. But anyway, some things in life are boring. We all know American sports are inherently very boring, so I accept that as well. Call centre waiting in New York is really boring as well. There was a utility in the UK, I don't know if you saw this recently, who was fined by the Information Commissioner's Office, and I think it was Ofwat in their particular case, that their average call waiting time for their customers was 48 minutes. Some customers waited 3.5 hours for their call to be answered. I think we'd all describe that as really boring. And so I've been on a lot of planes lately because I have a customer in Germany at the moment and spending a lot of time going back and forth there. And I've come to a conclusion that the real aim of ISIS is to bore us all to death, rather than blow us all up. Because I don't know about you, you get in these queues, you wait for hours, you then try and take your belt off, your shoes off, your laptop off, you try to balance all these things, and then the person in front of you says, "Oh, have I got an empty in my pocket?" So one corner at a time. Ghastly. So all those things are boring. But there are some things in data, frankly, I find really boring as well. My advice would be to any of you, if any of you ever tries to read an article about data management generally, or data governance, if the first sentence contains any of those words, throw it away straight away, okay? Because you're going to get the same load of cliches coming through every time. You know, this fast-moving digital era and such rubbish, and leveraging or optimizing your data assets. It's an important point, because if data governance is about culture change, and it's about getting the business to take the lead. If you use twaddle like this, your business will not listen to you. You need to talk, as Nicola said, in the language of the business. It's about making you more profitable, making you more successful, making your customers love you more, reducing our risk, protecting our reputation and our brand. These are the things that matter to businesses, not this twaddle. And of course, you know, I hope we haven't seen too much of that this morning, but many data presentations can be pretty boring too. I didn't think we experienced that this morning, but I was at the Data Governance Conference Europe Summit a couple of weeks ago, and I did see some presentations that matched that really well. Okay? So there's a lesson there as well, that if you're trying to sell data governance to your business, don't be boring, because if you're boring, nobody's going to listen to you. Okay? On the other thing as well, here's an example of the sort of rubbish that can put problems in the way for those of us trying to sell the benefits of data. Would anybody like to tell me what that means?
Oh, transmogrification.
I thought transmogrification was turning into a cat. Apparently not, but this was the headline of a Gartner report. And you know, if we show our business people things like this, see, nobody does it, nobody understands it. We are data people, we don't understand it. How the hell is anybody else supposed to understand it? So as you can see, I retitled their article. It was managing data lakes of unprecedented enormity, and I decided that time was producing data articles of unprecedented pretentiousness. And that's something that we all need to try and avoid as well. So, I want to prove to you, though, that data governance is not, as Gartner says, boring. Because I went to the Gartner conference in March as a guest of the vendor, and every single Gartner speaker, there's nobody here from Gartner, I hope I'm dead, but every single Gartner speaker said these phrases. I know data governance is boring, but. Okay, I know data governance is not the most interesting topic, but. As a data governance person, I got really fed up with this, as you can imagine. But then they all went on to say, anything else you're trying to do, big data, cloud computing, Internet of Things, without data governance, none of these things are going to work. So, but I would dispute the fact that it's boring, and I'll give you some reasons why I think it isn't boring. Okay, and there's some people who support me in that point. So why is data governance not boring? Number one, I think we've covered some of this morning, We live in a world now where data is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, it affects every aspect of our lives. The internet is no more than a network of machines connecting and communicating and transferring data back and forth. That's basically what the internet is. We shop through the internet now. Our cars are little mini computers. So I've got a car which has got a computer in it, which is more complicated than any computer I've ever worked with in my life, and constantly goes wrong. But basically, the car is not a massive computer. If you buy a Volvo car, every time you take it in for a service, they plug the car in, all the data is taken from it, and they do analysis of the fault patterns and everything else in the car to improve future car production. If you take the bottom right one, which is the A380 Airbus, the Super Jumbo, each of those 4 engines built by Rolls-Royce generates 15 terabytes of data in every hour of its operation. So it generates 60 terabytes of data from the 4 engines in every hour of flight. Okay, so if you want a 10-hour flight, that's 600 terabytes of data. When the plane lands, they sort of, using the technical term, plug it in somewhere. They download all the data, and then they use that data to do proactive fault analysis. So instead of waiting for the engine to tell them there's a fault, they use data to predict when the engine is going to tell them that there's a fault. So that improves maintenance. And of course, at the same time, it's comforting for us if we fly in one of those things, because there's a better chance it's not going to fall off, or collapse, or crash. So that's good news for us. So data governance isn't boring because it's everywhere, it's part of all our lives. Second reason it's not boring, people talk a lot about the data-driven business and digital business, but the ancient Greeks understood this a long time ago, right? Anybody recognise where that is?
Athens.
It's Athens, it's the
Acropolis.
The Acropolis and the Parthenon. Yeah, what do you know? Anybody know what the difference is between the Parthenon and the Acropolis?
Acropolis is the hill.
Correct. The Acropolis is the name of the hill. And before they built that magnificent Parthenon temple on top, which is about 3,000 years old, the ancient Greeks knew that if you're building anything, the first thing you do is get the foundation right. So they spent an awful lot of time flattening the top of that hill, so that when they put those amazing buildings on the top, they had a solid foundation on which to build. If you're a data-driven digital business, if you don't get the foundations right, your business is going to collapse, and it's certainly not going to last 3,000 years. You'd be lucky if it lasts 3,000 minutes. Because if you get your data wrong in the digital world, there's no time to recover from it. The damage is already done. So the Greeks understood that a long time ago, and it's still as true today as it always was. That you have to build good foundations for any business that claims or wants to be a digital business. Third thing, I think this has been hammered to death, but the Dharma view, which I totally agree with, is that data governance is the hub of all data management activity. And there's some really good examples of that. I think Nicola, you mentioned something this morning about master data management. If you're trying to define what a master data record looks like, who's going to do that? It's got to be the business, because they own that, and they're going to be the people who say, well, actually, these are the gender fields that we're going to allow. I went to one company who had 9 gender fields, and I worked out what 4 of them were, but I never did work out the other 5. But what we did discover is that 5 of the gender fields was simply another way of portraying the same thing. So they have 3 different ways of showing you a male or female, for example, which caused endless confusion when they did the reporting. So somebody in the business needs to make a decision to say, okay, we're going to have 4 fields, and use the 4 fields. So it's central to things like master data management, but it's central to everything else as well. Data quality management, the same. How do you know which data to improve if somebody in the business doesn't say, this doesn't meet our requirement, as Tim would say, and therefore this is a focus area for us. And data governance is central to that. It's also not boring, because if we're in the digital world, then by definition, remember there's an old cliche that's always said, our greatest asset are our people. I think more companies are now saying that our greatest asset is our data, potentially. But if you manage data in a very negative and loose way, it's not going to be available to be a competitive advantage to you when you're trying to deal with all your competitors. I know no better vehicle than data governance as a means of ensuring the business take the lead on this, rather than throw it at the CIO and the poor old IT department and say, you fix it. Because the IT department and the CIO cannot fix it without the active leadership and support of the business. So it's a great way to get the business involved. And it's not boring, because if you heard this horrible phrase, the monetization of data, more and more companies are getting the hand that if you have good data and you use it well, and you can learn an awful lot about customer behaviour and about the behaviour of other things as well, that it itself has monetary value. And some companies now, they've been talking about this for a long time, but some companies are now actually putting their data asset on their balance sheet as an asset to say that we have these data assets that no one else has. We know these things about our customers that no one else has. I remember having a conversation with O2 at the end of last year, Telephonic O2 in Slough, and they're seriously looking at this now because they know that every time you make a phone call on O2, you're giving away some valuable piece of information about yourself, which they then aggregate. Don't worry, they won't sell you individual details, they don't like to do that. But if they aggregate it up, it's really useful to tell advertisers, for example, what adverts do people notice, what things do people retweet, and what things, all your behaviour online, they can do that analysis. And they know they can make money out of that. And it's a basic rule, the better the quality of your asset, the more money it's worth. Simple as that. The better your people, the more valuable they are. The better your products, the more value they bring to you. Same with data. So, and of course the final reason that data governance isn't boring is quite simply that without data governance, as we've seen in many examples that have been given earlier, the ship will continue to hit the fan if we don't get on top of it. And there are businesses out there now who throw money down the drain because they lose revenue because of bad data, they don't bill their clients effectively and properly. I think John again mentioned some of the issues that we even had this morning. Their costs are higher than they need to be because they're constantly fixing data problems reactively rather than trying to sort them out proactively. You get unhappy customers. Nothing causes an unhappy customer more than if you can't spell their name correctly. I've been a Boots Advantage card customer for 10 years. They still think I'm a woman. Despite 3 emails to tell them that I'm actually not a woman, I still keep getting adverts for mascara and face powder and creams and certain times of the month and all the rest of it. They wasted a huge amount of money on that because as soon as I get it, I just throw it straight in the bin. Unless it's a weekend, but that's different. But anyway. And then of course it causes brand reputation. In the days of social media, gone are the days when you can get something badly wrong with a customer and get away with it. Because there are lots of examples, Virgin Media being one recently, where a customer was pretty pissed off with the way he was treated by Virgin Media and immediately put it on Facebook. And then everybody on Twitter, and everybody, all his friends, retweeted it to everybody else. Within 2 days of that problem, 500,000 people had seen his complaint. Guess what happened then? A lot of those people then said, actually, I got a really bad experience with these people as well, and here's my story. And the whole thing just sort of blossomed out of control, caused by one problem with one bill of customer experience. And of course, how many of you are aware of GDPR?
Yep.
Yeah, quite a few people. If you don't know what GDPR is, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is coming in 2018, I think, is it now? It varies a bit. I mean, it's a much, much tougher data protection regime that anyone in Europe currently is under. And by the way, if somebody said this morning, if we do Brexit, God help us, then it still affects us because if we trade in Europe, we still have to comply with it. So don't think that Brexit will get us out of this problem. If your company hasn't started looking at GDPR, you need to do that now because that's going to have massive impacts and implications, particularly in marketing. You can no longer market to people with implicit consent, you have to get their explicit consent to market them. So if you can't handle that now, you need data governance fast, and you need to do that. And of course, companies other business as well. So data governance is not boring, but it can be boring. I think when we talk about data governance, if we talk purely about things like command, control, policies, procedures, they are a necessary part of data governance. But frankly, to people, they can be as boring as gardening, okay? So don't focus on that. But when you do focus on data governance, think about those sorts of words. Data governance is all about improving our data. It's about being innovative with our data, doing new things with it that we can now do, because we couldn't do them before, because the data wasn't fit for purpose. But if we really got a hand on our customer data, we can do some great new things with it that we can't do now. And it's all about exploiting that data more effectively for the benefit, and also to excite people by all the things that you can do with data that you can't currently do. But it's hard to do exciting things with data if 50% of your customer addresses are not accurate and correct. Simple as that. Okay, so data governance should never be boring.